episode of Beyond the Device, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We're particularly interested in understanding how personal experiences, challenges, or pivotal events influence professional journeys. As we progress through the conversation, we will land on the question, what is the one defining moment or experience in your life that has changed everything and set you on the path you're on today? Today we are joined by Dr. Erica Conway, whose career in regulatory affairs began at GSK over 20 years ago, and in a full circle moment, she is back there now as Director of Global Regulatory Affairs for Precision Medicine and Digital Health, based on the west coast of the US. In between, Erica's career took her deep into the world of IVDs, leading regulatory teams, supporting startups as a consultant, and into BSI as their head of IVD, where she was responsible for the overall compliance of the notified body and where she oversaw their designation to the IVD regulation across both Europe and UK. Regularly invited to speak at major conferences, Erica is a trusted voice on regulatory strategy, policy interpretation, and the future of diagnostics. But behind that incredible CV, we want to understand the story, the moments that shaped her path, the challenges and decisions along the way, and what it's really taken to build such a career while balancing everything that comes with life outside of it. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. Thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Well, let's take it all the way back to where your story began. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a bit more about your earlier years and what shaped you growing up.
Where did it begin? I think a lot of people in this industry will just sort of say that science was within them. They couldn't see them doing anything other than being in science. And that was definitely me. I have no idea where that came from. But then I was reflecting and thinking about the fact that I did a degree in physiology at the University of Sheffield. Really enjoyed that. But during my degree, somebody came to talk to the year and say, would you like to do a year out in industry? And I was sat there going, God, actually that sounds really exciting. And this was in mid 1990s. It wasn't really normal for people to sort of go and do that sort of sandwich year. I think a lot of degrees do that now. And so I thought, yeah, I really fancied giving that a go. And so I actually had to stop my degree. So there was like 200 in the year, I think. I think 3 of us had to stop our degrees officially to go and do a year in industry. And I did a year at Eli Lilly, based in Windlesham. I don't think the site is still open, actually. But I did research at Eli Lilly. And I was just, that was my first taste of the application of science. Really enjoyed being in industry, and I thought, yes, I can see myself progressing, in science in some form. So I think that's where it all began, really. That sort of year out, finished my degree, and then I went to do a PhD because I thought, I want to carry on in industry. I want to see where this takes me. So.
Can you share a defining moment or experience that set you on the path that you're on?
So it's such an interesting question to reflect upon, because we all get on this sort of the wheel, don't we? And then to stop and think, gosh, what was that moment? And there's been, I think, there's been a few moments that I thought actually have been completely pivotal in the direction that I've gone. There's obviously personal moments, like I say, meeting my husband and having my children, 2 boys. Had that not happened, obviously the direction I went would have been different. But professionally, I think one of the really defining points was, as you said, I started off at GSK in pharmaceutical regulation. So this was after my PhD, and I didn't know, I wanted to go into something that I could apply the science, but I wasn't sure what that was. Had no idea what regulatory affairs was, of course, but I went into GSK, and that's where I was trained, a fantastic training in regulatory affairs. And we then moved, and I worked at Quintiles. I did drug regulatory for clinical trials, regulatory affairs for clinical trials. And then there was a point at which I thought, I'm not being challenged enough for me. And I remember we were on holiday in Aviemore. We're in Scotland, and I remember walking around a loch near Aviemore, talking to my husband about applying for this job in a diagnostics company. I had no idea what in vitro diagnostics were. I knew that the area of regulation was different, but that was it. And we went on this walk, and it was walking around this loch, outside in the fresh air, completely different space. That made me sort of jump into the deep end and go, right, okay, I'm going to apply for this job. And so I applied for a regulatory affairs manager job at Axis Shield Diagnostics, and they're now part of Abbott, Abbott Rapid Diagnostics. But at the time, like I said, I didn't know what diagnostics were really. I didn't.
Lots of prep for the interview then.
Yeah, and so, but there was something in me that I thought, yes, this is a different world. It's a new challenge. I'll go for it. I just literally jumped in both feet, and that clearly now looking back was completely defining for me to jump into a world of diagnostics, but actually, probably smaller community, very close community, but also the ability then later on to make more of a difference potentially, because you are somebody in a smaller world. So yeah, I think definitely that was a defining moment. Obviously, joining BSI, looking back as well, was career defining for me. And that again, it all slotted together because of this sort of close community that we're in.
Mm.
It was because of the connections I'd made early on with people like Sue Spencer. She hired me into BSI, and so yeah, without her support and the support of others at the time, Simon Richards, for example,
Yeah.
they were definitely defining moments. And of course, now I'm in Los Angeles, so there we go.
Yeah.
Another turning point.
You've covered an entire career in 5 minutes. I think the one thing I'll take from that is you must interview really well if you've gone for that job with no experience, or as Nathan said, the prep must have been exceptional.
Yeah,
and
or they only had a few people.
Yeah, all that.
yeah, and ChatGPT didn't exist back then, so it would have to been proper research.
Nathan.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so that move from GSK to Scotland, and then from Quintiles to Axis Shield, and
yeah.
into Axis Shield. The next step in your career before you got to BSI, you were an independent consultant for
Yes.
a period
Yeah.
of time, and that was around the time you started a family.
Yes, so that's right. So we were in Scotland. Again, I've told you that there's certain things that have moved me, and the geographical moves I've made are because of my husband. He's an academic, so we then moved to Oxford, and that was around the time that my son, he was not quite one, and so I wanted to carry on a career, and so I became self-employed. It was just a way of managing, juggling early years family and working. So, and again, due to the support of that community, there was a lot of people I remember because of the IVD community, people at BIVDA, they were so supportive. I was able to be self-employed for 5 years while bringing up small children. So yeah, I have all of
And
those things. Thanks.
it's a great example of continuing with your career aspirations whilst wanting to start a family, and probably, I'm sure, something that all women face when they're starting a family, that balance of career and maybe putting things on hold, or how can you continue working, the sacrifices that have to be made personally and professionally.
Yeah.
But it was a decision that you made at that point, and the consulting allowed for that. But how did you manage it just personally, coming out of more of a employed world into consulting whilst being a parent? How did you
Yeah.
manage that?
Well, I mean, it's just really difficult, and yeah, and that's not a revelation. Um, yeah, it was, yeah, and of course that was down to the support of my husband as well, because had he not been prepared to work full time and pay most of the bills, then it wouldn't have
Hmm.
worked. So, um, yeah, it was challenging. Like you say, being a consultant, you have to say yes to everything. You can't say no to anything because the work may not come back. It was, yeah, it was challenging, but at the same time, I was able to enjoy, 50% of the time um, with my son as he grew up. So yeah, I think I was lucky, let's say, right? And it's very challenging because not everybody will have that ability to be able to, effectively go down to one salary in the family. So,
Mm.
yeah, it was, yeah, and getting that, um, life as a parent is a guilt. It's a guilt journey, you know, uh, balancing how much time you devote to yourself and your career versus, clearly what's the most important thing in your life is the
Mm.
children and, how they're growing up. So that's, yeah, that's a challenge. But that's, again, I don't think that's new for anyone. That balance of being able to say, actually, I do want to maintain a career plus, having children. Um, Obviously, something that I don't regret because I now have
No, of
two
course.
big boys. But yeah, it takes support. It takes support from a lot of corners, both personally, um, but also professionally. I then I went into BSI, and the support was there within the company. I should say that because I was self-employed when my son was very young, I've been working from home for over 17 years. And this was not when COVID happened, I was really quite distraught about everyone working at home, invading my space. So I've been working from home effectively for 17 years, and had I not been able to do that, I think that again the logistics juggle is just even more challenging. So luckily, when I moved into BSI, there was the ability to work from home.
Mm.
Because of the nature of a notified body, a lot of the workforce are remote anyway. They're auditors, they're out in the field. So there was already the let's say the working model of people being remote. And so that worked for me. And of course, I was there 8.5 years, and I I both enjoyed the challenge of the work, but also it did afford me the flexibility to be able to manage being a parent as well at the same time. So
And
So on, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say the habits from the early years of parenting and still working. Have you
yeah.
carried some of those through still to today around time management, being
Oh,
laser focused on tasks and efficiency?
exactly. So uh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, as a parent, that yeah, exactly. They do say give a job to a busy person, don't they? Right?
Hmm.
Because you are, you're focused and you keep, you're efficient. Um, but I think in those early years, looking back, I've I've always been quite strict with myself about working from home. I knew that if I was going to work from home, then I had to treat it as though I was going into a place of work. So I've always been very strict with myself about, um, you know, getting up, being ready,
Hmm.
being, starting the day, and also I've tended to keep that, let's say, a fence around work at home, and then leaving the work and then not working. So luckily, I've been able to have an office, close the door at the weekend if usually that's possible, close the door, leave the work and go elsewhere, literally go elsewhere in the house for the weekend, so I think having that ability to separate work and home, I've always been quite strict with that.
Have you
I've
managed to
never.
carry that over to the US now, a change in environment, and is it
Yeah. I mean, we
time
will
zones that you're
eventually,
working
like
on?
we've just moved, so the logistics and space is a little bit different, but we'll get there. But yeah, I think, like I say, compartmentalizing work and home, particularly when you are working from home, is really important because yeah,
So
yeah,
we do a lot with people that transition into contracting, and it's usually a big career decision.
yes,
There's a lot of anxiety around doing it. It feels like the
yeah,
leap of faith. You've done that whilst having young children, which
yeah,
isn't like that to most people. They just don't seem like the two things that would go together. And there would have been thoughts, there would have been things playing on your mind in that time, surely. So how have you dealt with that? How were you coping at the time? What was your support network? I know you've mentioned your husband
yes,
a lot.
yeah.
But how were you dealing and navigating with that?
Um, yeah, it's difficult because you have to still manage, particularly with maybe small children. Actually, it's a little bit easier because the childcare seems to have a longer day. It's as soon as they go to school, and
Mm.
the days are shorter. You know, yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I think also, certainly when I've had people working for me that have had young children, and as a manager, you're then trying to support them in that situation. I've always sort of said, think about solving the childcare, solving the work and the life, almost um, for the short to medium term, but not to think too far ahead, because you can find a solution and then, surprise, surprise, the children grow up and they start doing other things, so solve the next academic year, of
Yeah.
childcare, but then don't try and sort of solve the whole of their schooling, now, because because things change. So I've always had a combination of family. Luckily, my parents were close when we were in Oxford, and I always knew one day in the week my mum would go and collect my kids from school. I knew, so everything, you'll find, a lot of my conferences and talks were all centered around the one day where I knew that my mum could look after the kids, So yeah, um, yeah. So I think, yeah, trying to solve the challenges, but only, not thinking too far ahead, because things change, and yeah,
Mm.
like I say, they grow up. So
So you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now if you hadn't have made that decision when you around your turning point and right,
yes,
I'm gonna swap industry.
yes,
What advice would you give to maybe someone that was in a similar situation where
yeah.
they feel like they're not being challenged, a change is needed, they feel stale? Like,
Mm.
obviously you spoke about how your mind was made up, but yeah, what advice would you give to someone who's in a similar situation?
Um, I think if you're not happy and you're not being challenged, some people are okay with that, right? And that's also what I've learned as I've gone through my professional career, is that people's motivations for work are different, and not everyone is the same. Not everyone wants to, you know, progress particularly quickly. Not everyone wants, certainly not everyone wants line management experience, or you don't, people's motivations are different. But if you really do want to make that change, then yeah, it's committing to the decision, isn't it? And then saying, right, okay, I'm going to have to do some research, but also this is going to feel uncomfortable. I know when I
Mm.
go into the job, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but actually it's because I've got stuff to learn, and that's okay. I think it's about the not expecting that you know everything, and and that's okay. But actually, the more you realise is that that's why most of us are in regulatory affairs or similar sorts of industries, is that we are always learning. So, that's okay. It's about that attitude, isn't it, to change, being prepared to take on, perhaps a bit more to learn. But, it's about an attitude change as well, isn't it, at the same time?
Yeah.
Um,
And with this latest move to the US and this next adventure, um, you've still got your children. They're older, so maybe there's a bit more freedom there.
oh,
Has that allowed you to go into this new role with GSK with, I guess selfish is the wrong word, but are there things now that you are looking at in this new role that you've got a bit more freedom to do, whether that's travel, go and speak at conferences?
exactly.
What's in the pipeline for you work-wise?
Yeah, well, so I'm really looking forward to this new role. It's actually been almost a year now since I've joined GSK, but still, again, talking about going into something new, I know that I've got lots to learn, and that's great. I love that, being in an area where you know that you're going to be challenged. Um, yeah, I mean, now that my children are older, there's the opportunity that I can, like you say, I can focus a bit more on my career, and certainly that's something I'm looking forward to doing. Is getting back out, hopefully getting to some conferences and speaking again, but yeah, we'll see.
And let's shift the focus actually towards the industry and the area that you work in. And precision medicine is such an exciting
Yeah,
part of the industry now, and probably what drew you to this role. And
exactly.
what excites you about this area?
I think what really excited me about the role was the fact that it was bringing everything, almost everything that I've been doing in my career together. The a little, I started off in the pharmaceutical industry, so the application of taking the bigger picture of getting medicines to patients is, that's a great, the aspiration and the goal. I'm really 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 excited about being in that space. Um, but yeah, the precision medicine is and companion diagnostics. It's not going away. It's only going to grow. And I think that and it's also really challenging because you've got different bits of legislation coming together, and how they work together. Um, but also the technologies as well. You've got AI coming through, the use of AI in precision medicine is really interesting. So yeah, you can see that it's only going to grow. So I'm really looking forward to yeah, making a difference in the current role.
And working in a company like GSK, do you feel like you are at the forefront of this and driving a lot of this innovation?
Well, not me personally, but um, I think being in a big company, you get that sense of, there is a very, really great team collaboration, and that sort of everyone driving to the same purpose. You do get that sense within a bigger company. Um, so yeah, the team that I'm working in is quite small, so we do have to go across a lot of different types of projects. So that's exciting. So yeah, yeah, we'll see.
So, if you had to sort of summarize or give one key lesson from your life, your career, can you?
Oh, um, I I think I may have said this before, but I think if I look back, I could not have predicted back then where I would be now, and so and I think that's the case even at certain steps along the way, that life takes you in a different direction, either geographically or, into a different industry and professionally. And so my advice would always be about looking, having the next step and the goal that you want to take, but not to think too far ahead, because you don't know what opportunities are going to come along, and great opportunities that will send you in a different direction. And that, so I think, thinking about the next step and making the positive move if it is a move, but then making, I think as well, then not regretting any of those decisions that you made for the best intentions at the time. So
Yeah.
like I say, my career is sort of, I don't know, it's gone in all sorts of different directions, but looking back, I don't have any regrets for any of those decisions. So think about the next thing, but not too far ahead, because you don't know what's going to happen.
No.
It's a great lesson.
Well, a big thank you for joining us today. I think there's a few lessons in there. You've got the earlier one where you needed a challenge and you didn't just sit there and accept your fate. You just swapped out of industry completely, did something completely new. You've done it again when your children or original child arrived.
Yes, yeah.
And then you've moved country, and the lesson around planning but not thinking too much into it, and how you broke it down into academic years with your childcare, all sorts. There's a big lesson in that, because I think we all get too caught up in the big picture all the time and forget about today. So a very important lesson for people.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And for our listeners, this episode will be out on YouTube, or you know that because you're probably already watching it, as well as Spotify. But if you've listened to this episode, you feel inspired or have a story to share, then reach out to either myself or Duncan. We'd love to have you on. But don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.